Hello and welcome to the Hotel Marketing Show. In this podcast, we're going to talk about all things hotel marketing. We're going to talk about things that are happening in the industry, insights, things that all hotel marketers or anybody that has an interest in hotel marketing wants to know about. My name is Victoria.
And I'm Nadine.
And we're the hosts of the Hotel Marketing Show. To kick off the podcast today, in this episode, we're going to be talking with Olga, co-founder and CEO at DialogShift, about the future of guest communication.
First of all, thank you so much for joining us today, Olga. I don't know how the weather is actually in Berlin. I hope it's nice. I don't see it through the camera, but the sun seems to be shining. Can you give us a little bit of an introduction to who you are, what you do, so that everyone knows about you?
Yeah, hi girls. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me here on your show. I'm Olga, the co-founder of DialogShift. DialogShift is a Berlin-based company I started 3 years ago with my co-founder, and we help hotels to automate and channel guest communication, saving time and bringing more engaged travelers to the booking engine. So this means we allow guest communication via messaging or chat, and we automate most of the queries that guests have. So yeah, that's what I do. And yeah, I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. That sounds great. And I think we'll dive into what brought up the idea of getting into guest communication a little bit later. But one thing I do also want to know from you today is, what is one hobby that you have discovered? That doesn't matter if it's a new one. Well, it would be nice if it's a new hobby, but one hobby that you're gonna keep doing in 2022.
Yeah, actually, I have revived an old hobby. I love theater and I try to go to the theater once a month, which is very nice in Berlin. We have a really nice theater scene here, and I have a group. We started going to the theater back in university when I studied. And so I joined them again, and we try to continue to watch a nice piece once a month.
That's so cool.
That's awesome.
And I love, like, obviously you said you've just revived that hobby, because I mean, what did you do over the pandemic? Did you have another way of getting that kind of theater fix?
No, we didn't do anything because everything was closed, and maybe that's one of the reasons why I revived this hobby, because I missed it for 2 years.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, it's so nice to be able to get back into doing these things where it feels like normal life again, but it's almost like it feels so much more special than maybe it did before.
Yes, exactly.
Nice. And another question for you, what's something that you hope to see in the hotel industry in 2022?
Actually, I hope, or I would love to see more good music in hotels, because I love it when I walk into a hotel and then there's a really cool or happy song playing, and then I immediately feel very happy too. And I think this is such a nice experience. And I had this recently. I traveled to Paris and I stayed in a 25 hours hotel. And I walked into the lobby, and do you want to know the song?
We need to know.
It was the song "I Think You're Great" by Alex the Astronaut. And if you listen to it, you know exactly what I mean. I immediately felt super happy and excited. And it was such a good feeling. It was such a good experience. And I thought by myself, actually, more hotels should have this. I love it when you have a good hotel playlist, and guests can connect with your brand and with the soul of the hotel via music.
That's so cool. I love that so much.
I think it's such a nice point. I think because also for us humans in general, we enjoy this, right? Nice music, nice smells, nice tastes. So it just brings a whole kind of different dimension to your experience also. And like you mentioned, you walk in and immediately you're in a good mood, and you know kind of that you can vibe with the hotel and what they stand for. So yeah, I love that.
That's such a great answer, and it's so different than like what everybody else has said as well. For whenever we ask this question, I love it. It's so good.
Hey, you mentioned at the beginning, just to dive into why we're here today talking about guest communication, that you are actually the co-founder as well. And I would love to hear a little bit about what sparked that idea. What is guest communication? What is the background of it? Just can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so basically guest communication means the transmission of information between hotel guests and hosts or hotels. And it can be anything, right? So it can be a phone call, it can be the personal conversation, it can be your email exchange, but it's also, of course, the communication that you have on the website. It can be a direct communication via a web chat, or also not direct. your website copy, your website images, social media apps, so any kind of digital communication as well. And I have experienced a problem as a hotel guest 4 years ago. And this was actually the idea for DialogShift in the end, because I was with my co-founder at a very big resort in France. And they had a lot of services, several restaurants and spas and kids club and workouts and stuff like that. And all the information about the services and the offering was in our lot, so in our small house that we rented. And we felt that we are missing out. So we had FOMO all the time. And I thought, I want to know which restaurant is the best and where I can do yoga, Pilates, and where I can send the kids so they have a great time. Yeah, and then a thought process started. And then we thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you had some kind of a digital concierge who's kind of feels like your buddy, who knows the hotel very well, and you can text him or it, she, her, whenever you have a question. And yeah, and so this is how we came up with the idea for DialogShift. And yeah, then we started the grinding. So we programmed or built an MVP. Then we had our first customers. We did customer development, and then we developed the product the solution with our first customers, which was quite an interesting, or is still a very interesting journey, because we follow this stair-step approach. So this means you kind of grow with your customers and build the features and the functionalities that they need. And then this way, of course, you have like a new customer segment. And yeah, it's really nice. And I love doing what I do.
Awesome. That's the most important, right? And guest communication is such a big topic. I mean, we've talked about it with other guests as well we had on the show up until now, and also about the information, because right now it's difficult for some hotels to say, hey, what information do I communicate when, and how do I communicate it, and where does the guest actually look for this kind of information? So it's such a broad but such an important topic.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I mean, what we see, or what we have seen during the last 10 years, is a diversification of communication channels. So 15 years ago, when you had a question and you contacted the hotel via phone or via emailed them, or if you were already in the hotel, you went to the front desk and then asked a question. But today you have so many ways to contact the hotel, or basically companies in general. So you can, if they have a web chat, you can chat with them on the website. Some use Google's business messages, then you can have a chat within Google or within Google Maps or from within the Google search. You can social media or messaging platforms. So you have so many ways to contact the hotel. And yeah, I think it's super interesting how also we kind of experience a shift in communication itself. So away from the traditional channels like email and phone towards messaging and chat.
Nice. That's really fascinating. And I think that kind of ties in really nicely to one of the questions that we had for you today as well, which is, what do guests actually expect when it comes to communication? Obviously, like you're saying, there's so many different channels, but what do guests actually expect when they're trying to get in touch with a hotel, or even the communication from the hotel towards the guests as well?
I guess what guests expect is that hotels are available. And this is super important. I mean, for companies in general, not only for hotels, but be approachable and be available, be responsive. Just be there for your customers who want to stay in your hotel, who have questions, who are planning their journey. I think this is very important. And it doesn't matter if you have like 10 messaging platforms, like you say, hey, you can contact me on Telegram, Viber, whatever. I think it's important that you offer the most common channels, such as web chat, WhatsApp. Here in Europe, WhatsApp is very important, or maybe Facebook to some extent. Maybe Google, it's quite new, but yeah, I think it's also very relevant. And then just offer them the most important or the most common communication channels, and yeah, keep them open. Like just be there for them. And also, I think guests, they expect that you have a short response time, so that they don't have to wait for hours for the response, but that you can get back to them very quickly, or even have like a direct instant chat.
I think that's also such a good point, because I think the more opportunities actually technology also provides us with, or in general how the guest expectations are shifting, you also have to be very careful that you actually meet their expectations so that it doesn't turn around and then it just leads to frustrations, right? I had this experience not with a hotel but actually with an airline, which was extremely frustrating because they were communicating to say like, oh, you can reach us everywhere, right? You can message us on Facebook and here's the WhatsApp number and direct chat over the website. I tried everything, and on no channel were they like responsive at all. And I was just so upset because I'm like, why are you putting this out there if this is actually not true? Then just, give a phone number and leave me in the loop for 3 hours, and at least I know that I'm getting somewhere. So I think that's also, as you mentioned, you have to be there. People expect that as well. Don't just provide the channels, but also be with them. And I think that's also why we see the uplift in these automated messages for maybe questions that are frequently asked questions. For example, can I bring my dog? And it's just an automated answer. Yes, you can bring your dog.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is the cool thing about chat, that you can automate it. So you can integrate a chatbot that answers the recurring questions or queries, and the chatbot can answer immediately and in a lot of languages, so depending on the solution. And this is super cool because in the hotel industry, in our experience, about 80% of the questions that guests have are recurring questions. As you said, like, can I bring my dog? When is breakfast served? Do you have a restaurant? And questions like that. And this is 80%. So 80% of questions that the hotel team has to answer over and over and over again, and the same answer over and over and over again. And this is so cool when you can have a chatbot in place that can answer this queries immediately. And then this way, of course, free up your hotel team so that they only have to answer the more individual questions, the more complicated things. And they have then also, of course, more time for that.
That's such a good point as well, because I think one of the things that we're like, or I think everybody knows at the moment is like, post pandemic, there is a big like staff shortage, affecting a lot of industries, but also the hospitality industry. If you're able to free up your team from having to just reply to these same questions over and over again, like by incorporating a bit of technology, I think it can be a powerful strategy for your team so that they can focus on these more kind of specific questions or provide guests more service as well.
Yeah. A question that I very often get is, but don't want guests a personal dialogue. So do they really want to speak to a chatbot? And of course, guests would always prefer a human. But if I have the choice between an instant message provided by a chatbot or a human message or answer from a hotel team member 3 hours later, then most people or most guests would say, okay, then I take the chatbot answer.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, I just think about whenever I'm on a website now, if I can't find information after a few seconds, I'm like, okay, straight away to the chat in the corner and asking my question. I'm impatient. I need to know the information when I want to know it.
Yeah, and this is so crucial for hotels, right? Because you want your website visitors to book and you want them to stay on the website and then to book on the website. So this is so crucial to engage them, to provide the information very quickly, maybe have a direct chat, like a live chat with them, and convince them that your hotel is a good choice and that they should book it. And another aspect of a chatbot is not only that it can provide an automatic answer, but it can provide a nice and engaging answer. And I think, dialogue marketing is something that is very interesting, especially for hotels, because via an automated answer or a reply, you can also kind of communicate your USP or the soul of the hotel. You can make them feel it. Like, for example, today, 2 hotels in Vienna went live with our solution, and the chatbot speaks like this Viennese accent, like in German, like they don't speak German, but like Austrian, or say Austrian or Viennese, like you would say in German, Wiener Schmäh. And it's so nice. This is so great because you interact with this chatbot and you can feel it. Like you really feel the city, you feel Vienna, you feel the hotel, and it feels so nice. And this is something you can do so well with a system like, for example, a chatbot. You can really use it for marketing purposes.
I think that's really cool as well, because like one thing I haven't heard the term dialogue marketing at all, but I'm assuming that it's kind of similar to the term that's used conversational marketing, where it's something that we talk about quite a lot as well. And when we talk to our customers as well, is looking at the way that your guests talk and then using that same kind of language, back to them as well when they are communicating with you as a hotel, because then it's like they're kind of already giving you an insight into things that they want to hear or things that they want to know about, and then you can use that information and share it back to them. It kind of sounds like a similar kind of thing.
Yeah.
We also talked a little bit already, well, by saying what all you can do. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the mistakes as well that maybe you see or you've experienced? What are some common mistakes that hotels do when it comes to guest communication?
Yeah, I think one common mistake, or I wouldn't call it mistake, it's actually something that I think they think is not important enough, but which is actually very important, is what I already said about being approachable and available, and not providing or having communication barriers in place. So make it easy for your guests to connect with you, to get in touch with you. Don't make them work, don't make them pay, for example, via asking for their email address before they can start a chat and stuff like that. I think this is very important. Yeah, to be open, just to be there for your guests, and not to kind of push away the communication or the questions that guests have, because I see that sometimes that hotels, of course, they're under a lot of pressure. They don't find the staff they need, and then they say, I don't care. I don't want them to contact me at all. I just can't bear it anymore. And I say, yeah, okay, but those are the people that pay you money. You have to talk to them. This is so important.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that hotels really should have they prioritize more, maybe. Yeah, I should put it like that. And then what I also see when your communication, and also website copy, for example, but also chatbot copy, this is what I always see, when the copy, your communication text, is very heavy. It's not engaging, it's not sexy, it doesn't make me feel anything. And I think this is another very important point, that you can use copy or the language and text to make guests or potential guests feel your hotel, to make them excited about your hotel, to make them want to go to your hotel.
I think that is also one of the points that I absolutely love that you're mentioning, is that even the hotels now, you mentioned like a couple of sentences back in Vienna, it's just even pre-arrival, right? You want to feel what you're going to feel when you're there. And we talk so many times about, at the core of hospitality, it's always the connection. And I know that some hoteliers say like, I don't want a chatbot and this is just too generic, but it doesn't have to be, right? You can also use it to differentiate yourselves from all the generic ones out there, and kind of have that as your online, let's say, front office, just as you would in an offline environment as well. So I love that point.
Yeah, that's really cool. And there's I can't remember if we've talked about it on the podcast before or not. Nadine, you probably might remember as well, but we talk a lot about the Chaldini's principles of persuasion. And one of the ones that we really like is one which is liking. I think why I love this one is it's about using your direct channel as a way to build a connection with the guest, and actually it sounds weird, but make them like you. So using these opportunities to actually build a personal connection with them, and the direct channel is such a good way to do that. And like you said, using the text and using the copy to actually create that kind of personal connection with the guest, I think is such a huge opportunity for hotels as well.
Yes, especially on the website. So when you have a web chat in place, so no matter if it's only live chat or with an automation, with a chatbot, the probability that a website visitor who uses the chat, that this user will book a stay on your website, is 3 times higher versus a user who doesn't use a chat. It's only seeing the website.
Wow,
And
this
is
crazy.
Yeah, 3 times. Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. And we talked a lot about on the website, but how do you think guest communication plays into the entire guest experience? Because you mentioned that the kind of the trigger for the idea for DialogShift came from an actual on-site experience. Like, how do you think that guest communication can tie into like the entire guest experience from before they've even booked to, after they've stayed as well?
Yeah, I mean, so when we focus now on the direct, like this personal dialogue communication and not the website copy, which is not direct, then of course, so it starts with basically in Google. So how do yeah, for most hotels, not for all hotels, okay, but for most hotels, it starts in Google. So how do people or how do potential guests find your hotel? And I would say for most hotels, it's Google. And then you can already have this messaging function in Google. So our guests can get in touch with you very, very early in their guest journey when they have questions about or queries about the stay, the hotel, and so on. And then basically hotels can be available on various communication channels through the entire guest journey. So when the guests plan their stay, so where are they? They basically they go to the website. So they are on your website and maybe they need a restaurant recommendation, stuff like that. So yeah, just give it to them. Let them contact you and give them a nice restaurant recommendation. Maybe you can already say, hey, we can make the table reservation for you. And then when guests are on site, so then they usually don't go to the hotel website anymore. But if you have a hotel app, then make yourself available also in the app. If you have a digital check-in solution in place, maybe there is the possibility also to contact your team. If it's, for example, if it's a hotel without staff, I mean, we have that as well, right? So you can check in nowadays without a person in the hotel. So this is super important that you enable or allow guests to contact you when there's no people available in the lobby. And and then when they check out, again, send them a nice message or email. It also goes, of course, with email. I mean, it's not only chat. So you always have this mix of communication channels, and just be aware which channels are the most important for me. So for example, if I'm very active on Facebook and have a big audience, do a lot of Facebook marketing, then I should also have Facebook Messenger. So allow guests to contact me via Facebook Messenger. If I, for example, use Instagram a lot, then please let guests contact you via Instagram. And yes, another very important channel that gets more and more important is WhatsApp, because WhatsApp has an immense power because so many people use WhatsApp daily. And the possibility to contact the hotel via WhatsApp feels very personal. It feels very natural. And I think WhatsApp is very powerful. And Meta, the mother company of WhatsApp, actually expands the functionalities for WhatsApp business communication. And I think it's very interesting, or it will be very interesting to see to see how also WhatsApp will be like a major communication channels in more hotels.
I think that's really interesting as well, because we talked a little bit before about how guest communication is changing and what guests are expecting. And I think you can almost see how consumer behavior is like driving a lot of these things. Like, people use WhatsApp all the time, or like you said, especially here in Europe. And as a hotel, you need to be on these channels that people are using and where people feel comfortable as well, because that's how your guests want to communicate or where they want to get information from as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not a must. You don't have to be on WhatsApp, but you have to think about the advantages that you have, right? So you can build a very personal connection with your guests, and it feels very, as I said, personal, natural. And then I, of course, have the association with the hotel, and it feels better than for many people. It feels better than calling and hoping that somebody will pick up the phone.
It's so true. Even like, I think of the times where I've used a live chat on a website and then didn't get a reply back, and then forgot that I had that tab open and then just closed it, and then my whole chat was like gone and stuff. So even using WhatsApp, if somebody doesn't automatically get back to me straight away, I'm still going to get a notification later on when they reply to me anyway. So even just like keeping everything consolidated as well, I think it's a great channel as well.
I'll have to go back to my airline example actually, because there's also a great airline, well, an airline who also does that, right? Uses WhatsApp as their main kind of method or channel of communication. And I think it's so nice and it takes so much stress away because it's just like you can get your boarding pass right there on WhatsApp. You have your questions answered right there in WhatsApp. It's not that you have to filter through, okay, I got this, my boarding pass and my emails, the question got answered on WhatsApp. I still have this outstanding thing on live chat. It's just nice. It's everything is compact. And I think that this could potentially also be the future of hotels, right? And talking about hospitality and saying like, okay, you get a pre-arrival WhatsApp just as something that is personalized. There's so much potential.
It's very interesting. When we started out in 2018, 2019, there was this, of course, the chatbot hype and the messaging hype. And many people said, oh, the website is dying out. We'll only have chatbots in the future and stuff like that. And then back then the trend was, yeah, you need like 10 messaging platforms be available on all the messaging platforms out there. And this is not necessary. You just have to figure out which of the messaging platforms are relevant to my guests and to my business. And here in Europe, it's WhatsApp, it's Facebook Messenger, it's Instagram. Maybe depending on your guest structure or your guests, it's maybe Telegram. Or if you have a lot of Chinese guests, then it's WeChat. But that's it. So basically, that's it.
How would you go about if we're talking now and someone listening to this episode and says like, okay, all of this resonates, all of this makes sense, but how do I actually start? Like, how do I figure out what my channels are? And maybe, like you said, there is only a certain array of like, let's say 8 channels, but how many channels should a hotel be present on? Is there like a kind of a guideline for it, or it really depends on every single property?
Okay, the most important thing, and it makes like 90% of guest communication that is coming through a chat is through the web chat. So the most important channel for hotels is the website chat. If you have only this one in place, you're fine too. Because
see, that probably relieves a lot of pressure on some people who are listening right now. It's like, oh yes, okay, I got my website chat, I'm good to go.
Yes. And then of course you can, depending on the solution that you're using, most of the solutions they allow to integrate more channels. And then I would always say Google, because Google is just Google. And for the moment, what we are seeing is that not so many people use Google's business messages, but it's expanding month over month. So through all our hotels, we see from month to month, we see an increase in the usage of Google business messages. And so, yeah, then I would take Google business messages, and depending on your marketing. So as I said, if you do a lot of Instagram marketing, Facebook marketing, maybe this would be an interesting channel, but depending on what you already do and what you already have. And then WhatsApp, of course, because WhatsApp is very powerful, and WhatsApp is used like immediately a lot by a lot of guests because they just, they are used to WhatsApp. And but WhatsApp is quite expensive, unfortunately, because of Meta, and it's not that that cheap, especially if you want to integrate a chatbot. If you want to use only a live chat, then it's basically, it doesn't cost anything. But then you have a lot of live chats that you have to answer manually. Yeah, so that's it. Yeah.
Awesome. And I actually have another question tying into this one, because oftentimes we hear, for example, depending on what it is, to say, well, our guests don't want this, or we don't have the generation of guests who would use that because they still prefer to call us or send a fax. So what do you think? What is your kind of experience with this as well? Is that really true? Is there such a generational gap that maybe the older generations don't use chats, or is that just a rumor that started and now is persisting?
Yeah, kind of the second. I mean, if I have an hotel only for old people, like 60 plus, then okay, then I would say, maybe you should have a phone. But if I have a hotel where I have guests 50 plus and from 40 plus, you don't have to have the super young generations as your hotel guests, but then you definitely should offer other ways of communication than only phone and email, and guests will use them. They will do. They just do.
That's like
cool.
music to my ears.
Yeah, this is so interesting because I have this conversation very often. So when we have customers, especially luxury hotels, where they have this white glove service and everything is personal, and then they say, I'm not so sure. I think my guests will not use the chatbot. They won't like it because they're used to this personal connection and this personal conversation. And then when they see their statistics report, they always can't believe it.
But I think this is also such a good point, because also talking about luxury, right? It's what you said at the beginning, or relatively at the beginning. Would you rather have a question and hang in the line on wait to the phone until someone is like a human being on the other end? Or do I want to book a luxury property and I have a pressing question if this is available to me upon arrival, and just want to have the answer quick and easy? So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and as I said before, it's so important for your commercials, because when I want to book your hotel or a hotel, and then I have a pressing question, and this is very important for my decision if I book this hotel or not. And if I get the answer in the reply immediately, then I can make my decision and I can book the hotel.
Yeah,
If
it's
I
like
get the
Victoria said as well, right? Like, she's like right there in the chat, and probably if she doesn't get a response within 10 minutes, she's done off to the next property.
Not even 10 minutes. I give it a couple of minutes and then I'm out.
Yes, right.
Yeah, and I think there's this kind of theory or a behavioral kind of principle called the messy middle when people are doing any kind of purchasing, but especially with travel, if you imagine like an infinity symbol and they're switching between like exploration and evaluation and going back and forth until they find information that helps them, make their decision. And during that time, that's like they're visiting the OTAs, they're visiting your competitors. And if you can give them that information that they want to help them, with their evaluation, you stop the exposure to your competitors and the OTAs as well, because they've got the information they need to book their trip.
Yeah.
Nice. So
Very
I
well
think
said, Victoria. Very well said. Nothing to add.
I agree.
Awesome. Well, I think we've just got a couple of questions left for today, and I think my last question, and then Nadine can do the final question and wrap up. But can you share some examples of hotels that you think are leading the way with guest communication?
Yes, I think one hotel that is doing a really good job is the Sonnenalp Resort in Bavaria, here in Germany, because they have quite an interesting guest mix. So it's a luxury resort, but they have younger guests and older guests and all the ages. And they have a website chat in place, Google, and also WhatsApp. And what I really like about this example is that the Sonnenalp Resort, as I said or described in my intro, how we came up with the idea for DialogShift, they also have a lot of services, a lot of things that you can do. They have 7 restaurants, a huge spa area, and their guests have so many questions when they're planning their stay, when they're already in the hotel. And before they started working with us, they only had like a phone and email. And they were just, it was too much, like too many calls, too many emails. And now they diversified their communication channels. They automated a big part of it. And they are very successful. And their guests, they have like a usage on their channels. It's incredible. Like, I've never seen this before. This is a really good example.
Awesome. Sorry, I felt like, sometimes I feel like Victoria wants to say something and then I just want to give it a minute, but then
No, I was like, you can't tell, but I was looking at you, like waiting for you to ask your final question.
Okay. My final question, actually, the hardest question of the day is for everyone who is listening right now and they are wondering now and saying, wow, there was so many good nuggets in here, but where do I start? What are my 3 key takeaways that I can leave this episode with and start implementing tomorrow? What would that be?
Yeah, so the first takeaway, and I'm saying it now the 3rd time, is be available, be approachable. This is super important.
Well, now if that doesn't stick in people's minds, we can't do anything else, right?
Yeah,
we
right.
mentioned it multiple times.
They need to write it down, underline it, come back to it. Like that's their mantra now.
Yes, be there for your guests. Yeah. And then also don't fear automation. It's not that bad. I think it has a quite bad reputation, but it's really, I mean, you can have really good results with it and free up your hotel teams and your staff. And yeah, and also use the content well. So just don't use like generic answers that are boring and unsexy, but think about your brand, your hotel, what is special about it, and how a chatbot can transport this whole concept of your hotel, the soul of the hotel. And also don't build communication barriers in general. Don't let work for communication or pay for communication. Make it very easy for them. And actually in general, not only for communication, like for every process and everything they have to do, it should be very easy, without barriers, intuitive. Yeah, that's very important for the guest experience.
That was awesome. There's such great takeaways and such a nice like summary of all of the things that we've talked about today. And I think also nice and practical as well. I think it's really good.
And last takeaway is that everyone who's listening to this episode, and definitely the first thing I'll do as soon as we're off, is listen to the song I Think You're Great.
Yeah, it's a great song. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Olga, and sharing all of this wisdom with us about guest communication. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. It was a great conversation.
Awesome. And for those of you listening at home, please share your thoughts with us. If you think there's anything else that we've missed, or if you have any questions about any of the topics that we've covered today, please get in touch with us at welcome@hotelchamp.com, and make sure to follow Hotel Champ on all of your favorite social media channels. Stay tuned for more episodes in the future. Take care of yourself. Have a great day, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.